This is your number one source for all things comics, movies, and pop culture. It's Geek Week with Chris and Nick.
You're tuned into Geek Week.
I'm Chris Natali.
And I'm Nick Rotundo.
To all those listening, thank you for joining our discussion.
And if you would like to hear any of our old episodes, be sure to check out our YouTube account, which is posted on our Facebook account at www.facebook.com/geekweek885.
So this week's topics being modern age of comics.
One of pretty much what we grew up on. I mean, this is the modern/dark age, as they call it, of comics, 1985 to present day. Like, it's still ongoing. I'm kind of a little excited to see what after, the next transition of comics, what would be called, the future age. I don't know. But it's cool to see that. So
to be determined.
Exactly. But this is stuff that, both Chris and I grew up on. This is when we were growing up. We read the older comics too, but this is what was on the shelves being sold, like as new this week.
Yeah, the first comic I got back when I got back into comics when I was younger was Civil War issue number 1 by Mark Millar. So that was, I agree with you right there, man. This is what I was reading when I was growing up, and I love this stuff. And obviously I love the older stuff too, because you gotta, like I said, respect the older stuff. But this is what I was experiencing when I was a kid. So
I think the first comic book I ever got was because, funny story, my cousin had a Spider-Man action figure, and he lent it to me for a little bit, and unfortunately I broke its arm. So my dad and I went out and we bought a new one, gave it to him, and it came with a comic book. So I kept the comic book and I kept the broken one, the broken Spider-Man toy. So I read the comic book, and it was like a reprint for the toys of Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. And then ever since then I was hooked. So funny stuff like that, it brings you to what nowadays what I appreciate as my favorite artists. My favorites are from this modern age, from John Romita Jr., Todd McFarlane,
Brian Michael Bendis, Mark
Todd
Millar.
McFarlane. The list goes on and on. But so if the golden age of comics and the silver age of comics were the childhood of superheroes, the bronze age of comics was their adolescence, and the modern dark age was their angst-ridden teenage years. Modern age, kind of along with that, is surely the college years. All the work gets turned in late. People come up with you with crazy, awesome ideas all the time, most of which don't really pan out. One More Day. We're not talking about that. I hate that. Thank you, Brian Michael Bendis, and all of those people in Marvel. I can't. But yeah, other than that, there's some adolescence still in it. There's still that adolescence attitude, but it's grown into something way more mature. People know these characters. It's well loved amongst millions. So in the process, some things that are changed over time from adolescence into the older times, it's not necessarily a bad thing to get rid of some stuff or create some new stuff, or keep some stuff the same.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you, man. It's interesting to see where comics go, especially from each era that we pass through, and I'm really glad they eventually gave up on the Comics Code. I think 2011 around that time is when they gave up on that.
Thank you.
And as much it was cool to see it kind of start and then end and see that progression. But yeah, it's this age of comics is called the Dark Age of Comics due to the popularity of these dark and kind of dark, grim titles like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen.
Two of your favorites.
Yeah, these are two classic books. I've read Dark Knight Returns. I've watched the animated movies. I've read the Watchmen. I've watched the movie and the director's cut. They're just two great things,
Of course. Speaking of movies, obviously, I remember watching the director's cut of Watchmen in your dorm a couple years back, and it changed my whole opinion on that movie because I hated the theatrical version. And I want to see what you think of when the extended cut comes out on DVD because for Suicide Squad, because I watched it online. My roommate got it illegally, I guess you would call it, but he got it online. We watched it last night after we like finished all of our work and everything, and honestly, so much better than the theatrical version. So I'm really hoping to see how you feel about it, because I know you weren't too keen of the theatrical version yourself.
I mean, I know. I see.
Joker. That was your,
I did like Suicide Squad as a movie. I mean, did it have problems with plot? Yeah, but like overall, I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it's horrible.
The plot is still paper thin, but but still, the actual like. You see more of the abuse of the Harley-Joker relationship. You see more of the flashbacks, which is really cool.
The extended cuts are usually good for that kind of thing because they give you the whole director's like kind of view on what they were trying to do, like their whole kind of, I don't know,
sometimes
their mission for that movie.
Yeah, sometimes I just wish that like companies like Warner Brothers or like Disney or whoever it is, like just let the directors express themselves. The movie's 3 hours. I'm gonna go pay to see a 3-hour movie. If it's good, I'm gonna go pay to see it.
As long as corporate's around, dude, that ain't gonna happen.
Exactly. But it is what it is. So, I mean, with that, because it's so dark and The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, speaking of, how it's progressed, the start date really, I mean, is 1985, I should say. But if you want to really see, like, the start date for the modern age, then publication of Ultimate Spider-Man #1, year 2000, is as good as a signpost as any. Like, this is where it just comes into play. This is the definition of the modern age. It's Peter Parker all over again, looped back as a teenager, back in high school in modern times. He's wearing like the peace sign t-shirt, like back when in 2000, like the teenagers were all about like teen angst and everything and using cell phones all the time. He had that like 2000s teenage haircut where it was a lot longer than it was in like in Look Back at Amazing Fantasy, where his hair was slicked back. So with that, I think loved it.
Yeah, Ultimate was a great look for him. I think it really captured the essence of Spider-Man. I read those. I read Ultimate X-Men. Like those are great titles. And like as a kid, I was like, this is awesome. And I'm so glad I grew up with them, because like eventually later on, I found a guy on Instagram and I bought like the first 5 issues of Ultimate X-Men, and I was like, sick. I can't wait to get back into that, because it's like
Ultimate
nostalgia.
Wolverine is insane.
Yeah, I think they're awesome. The Ultimates are such different comics. Like they're so different, and they stand out amongst the others.
I was so upset when they decided to end it.
I mean, things change, things happen. They got to move on, do different things. I understand what you're saying, because I love them too. I love the Ultimate Comics dearly. It's just that artists, writers, I mean, plans for Marvel or DC or things like Image and stuff, it's going to change eventually, and they're going to end up doing newer things and trying to change things up for their readers.
That's true. I mean, I don't know if we're going to talk about the book necessarily, but the whole event of like the Battle World and the new version of Secret Wars, that's what really caused all of the other universes, the noir. I think 2099 is still part of the main Marvel universe, but the Ultimate Universe, like that we're talking about, which is also called Earth 1616, was destroyed, just obliterated. Miles Morales ended up crossing over dimensions into the normal Earth 616, which is like the normal Marvel comic universe, I guess you would call it. So I mean that's how things have evolved over time, and it's become more of a, like they call it, modern age.
And with this, I feel like with the whole Ultimate thing and everything, it came like the rise of the anti-heroes. You're just talking about Wolverine. There's Deadpool, there's Punisher, Frank Miller's Daredevil, Spawn, which I gotta say, I love every single one of these characters.
Oh yeah. Everybody loves an anti-hero. It's literally just going out and doing your own thing. You can be bad if you want to. You be good if you want to. You get paid to do it.
You're like in the middle of both sides. You're not good. You're not bad. You're not like designated as good or bad, but you're in the middle of that. and you're not really choosing a side, so to speak.
Oh no, there's a fire downtown, but my favorite movie's on TV, and I got a big tub of ice cream. I guess I could just chill.
Sounds like a Deadpool thing.
Yeah, I could just kick back and watch it. No responsibilities. That's what was all about these anti-heroes. That's why I love it. But, you know, of course, the big guy who pretty much put all these people together, well, at least two of them, Rob Liefeld.
Deadpool and Cable.
Deadpool and Cable.
And Fabian Nicieza. Let's give him some credit there.
Very
He's
true.
also... People give Rob Liefeld all the credit sometimes, and I feel like Fabian doesn't get enough.
Very true.
I got to give him the credit where credit's due.
And also, of course, Todd McFarlane did Spawn. A lot of people are not appreciative as much about Todd McFarlane. He's got some backlash over the years. But you know what? He's done a lot for at least my childhood. I grew up with his halfway through. I grew up with his Spider-Man. I grew up with also John Romita Jr.'s Spider-Man. But I loved McFarlane's big eyes and the web armpits.
I agree. I like McFarlane's design, and to be honest, like what he was doing for Spawn was great. I actually have the animated series of Spawn, and like each episode before it goes in to the episode, he talks.
Apparently, there's rumors that they're gonna do a reboot of the Spawn movie.
They should, and
it's gonna be almost like Jack the Ripper, where you don't see Spawn. He's like this ancient like fairy tale that no one knows exists, almost like the Loch Ness Monster. You see this silhouette of Spawn throughout the entire movie, and when a bad guy shows up, all of a sudden a hand reaches out and just pulls him into the darkness.
I'm completely okay with that.
If you watch what is the show that Kevin Smith does? Not Comic Book Men. It's
Kevin Smith reference.
Well, yeah, no, but he interviewed like one of his interns or whoever it is on the show that's with him, not Greg Gunberg. There's some girl that works with them on the show, and she interviewed Todd McFarlane in one of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually... Oh, Geeking Out. There we go. It's called Geeking Out. It's on AMC. And she interviewed Todd McFarlane, and he pulled up like actual frames of like drawings of like an idea for the Spawn movie.
Hey, Spawn's a great character, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta... And definitely... more diversity with Spawn, considering like the character that actually is under like the, I guess I can't even say mask because it's not really a mask, it's like a demon type of like outfit, but the person under it's black, and like that's awesome. I think it's awesome for like,
well, not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, people were like, oh, Spawn's like, some people were like, Spawn's probably white. No, it's really not.
Someone I know, I forget who it was, someone told me they watched the movie and they told the original Spawn movie that, let's be honest, wasn't really that good. It was. I enjoyed it for what it was.
For its time, it was decent.
But they watched it and they said, why did they cast him as a black guy? Like, just make him how he's supposed to be. I'm like, he's supposed to be that, dude. Relax. Like,
and like that's another thing that annoys me. People get so mad over casting with people of different races, but who cares if they get the part right?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Like, who cares?
Like, I mean, look, Jamie Foxx is Electro. For what it was, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd rather have that form of Electro than have the one with the 3 lightning bolts on his head like a clown. He looks like a clown. I'm sorry, but like that wouldn't have came out well in like a movie.
Yeah. So I mean, like for example, I hated the fact that they just decided we're gonna make Harry Osborn the Green Goblin. We're gonna skip over Norman being the Green Goblin, and like they cast Dane DeHaan, and he wasn't good at all.
I didn't like him.
Don't get me wrong. I think he was good as Harry a little bit, but there's hints of it. I
didn't care for him as Harry. I kind of like James Franco as Harry just because he kind of had that rich boy attitude, like, and Dane DeHaan didn't really. I don't know. He didn't do it for me. I
saw Chronicle, and that's why I thought he was going to do okay.
Well, I did see Chronicle as well, and I enjoyed Chronicle for what it was. I really did because it's a different movie.
Be good.
But I don't know. I just didn't. I could not grasp his Green Goblin in my eyes.
Yeah,
just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, though, that was insane. And also Dormammu. He did the facial recognition and voice of Dormammu for the movie.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a nice little Easter egg I read on comicbook.com. It turns out they scanned his face, and like, you know how he does Smaug for the Hobbit movies and all that stuff? They decided to do it, and they said it was an unnamed English actor, or like a to-be-named English actor playing Dormammu for that. And it was supposed to symbolize like this is the dark path that Doctor Strange could go down.
Yeah, I felt like it was going that way.
Yeah, but going back to the comics, talking about the 90s, because of course this is where all those anti-heroes came into play, specifically Deadpool and Cable and Spawn. In the 90s, you also had a lot of different stuff going on. For example, when you were to go pick up a Spider-Man book, you could pick up Amazing Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, Avenging, Spectacular, Peter Parker Spider-Man. Like the list goes on. And let's say Chris picked up Amazing Spider-Man and I picked up Spectacular. Wouldn't have mattered. It's not like a storyline that coexists. It's like just two different stories going on at the same time. Whereas in this, for example, DC did a Superman storyline from 91 to 2000. And they were written on a weekly basis. But one needed to buy all of these comics together. Ready? Here we go. Superman, Adventures of Superman, Action Comics, and Superman the Man of Steel, and also eventually Superman the Man of Tomorrow. All of those just to keep up with the any existing storylines. But if a collector were to only buy, let's say, Action Comics, they'd only get like 25% of the story.
I mean, but back in the day, I feel like comics weren't that much money anyway, so like it was okay.
Well,
and then,
yeah.
like now we would definitely be whining about that, like having to get the whole story by buying all those comics. I feel.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like you go out to go buy a graphic novel, and it's like $20.
Yeah, like 15 to 20, mostly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm gonna pay for some things that I really, really want, but now I have to limit myself.
I mean, graphic novels do help. To, like kind of save money because they're all the issues in one. You don't have to like buy single issues.
Very true.
Some issues may cost more than others. Like the first issue usually costs more than like obviously the second, third, fourth, whatever. And the graphic novels are just, I feel like, a better way of doing it, especially if you want to just read the story. Like if there's, the way I look at it is if you want to collect something and you want to collect issues, you should really love the storyline. Love the storyline that you're collecting the issues for. If you don't love it, just get it in trade because it's just better that way because you have the whole story in front of you. You don't have to worry about, you could save money that way.
Yeah,
but like,
I mean, that's where this came into play. Like this modern age of comics was the pretty much what shot graphic novels into existence. Like, hey guys, you missed Ultimate Spider-Man, the first like 100 issues or whatever, or first 25 issues, whatever it is. I bought like the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man because of the fact that I had all these single issues where it was actually, they're kind of double issues, I guess you would call them, because it's front and then you flip it upside down. On the back is the other half of the comic, is the follow-up comic. I used to collect those for like, well, when I was a kid, like I just pick them up every week. And like I started off like way into the series. So picking up like volume 1, I saw like how Ultimate Spider-Man came to be, basically. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's not just all about superheroes in this era. I mean, yes, there was a decline of the single issues because graphic novels shot up, but I mean, I think it's now kind of balanced out. But it's not just about superheroes now. I mean, this is pretty much the, I don't know, how would you put it? Like, not the epitome, but like it's becoming more and more relevant. Like, more people are going for the, not the Marvel or the DC, but the indie comics, like the independent comic names. So like, I
can name you 3 titles off the top of my head that I know people are going for at the comic shops that I go to. There's Saga, you got
Fables.
Fables is another one. Walking Dead's another one. Like they have these all these different kinds of comics that they have out there. Like Invincible is another one. There's plenty, and it's great because I honestly don't think comics are all about superheroes. As much as I love superheroes, I think that having a broad kind of spectrum of comics is great because it gets all different audiences to come in and say, you know what, I want to pick that up today.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of also makes it not just for kids as well, because like you said, for example, Walking Dead. Comics Code, if it was still in existence, Walking Dead wouldn't have hit past issue 1.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So, I mean, you have comics where it's not just even about, like, fake things. Now it's kind of like, hey, let's take topical things too. Like, for example, Pride of Baghdad, which is about some lions who escaped from the zoo during the Iraq War. So they're kind of taking things that are topical and just doing comics about them. It kind of, if you don't really like reading the news, or you're a teenager or a kid and you want to know what's going on, but whether it's you're too young to watch the news because you get freaked out, whatever it is, like this is a great way to turn to things.
They find ways to tie in like themes or events that are going on into comics by making them easier to digest, I should say. Yeah, I would say that.
So yeah, I mean, with that, it's definitely go pick up graphic novels and single issues, guys.
Yeah, guys, graphic novel is good if you want to just read the story. Single issues you want to collect, especially if you love the story. Go hunting. I gotta say, there's no more joy of like going out and finding those issues that you really need for your collection.
All right, so we talked about the facts about the modern age. Talked a little bit out of that as well, but now it comes down to talking about examples of comics in the modern age of comics. What is the most popular things, the most important aspects and storylines of this era?
Well, we know we're not going to be able to get into all of them because there's just way too many of them. But
we tried to make a list.
Try to make a list of the top ones,
or at least
we could.
Like, or at least like what we thought were the most important, what inspired us the most.
So there's a DC title called Kingdom Come. It's written by Mark Waid and art by Alex Ross. Loved this title. My buddy had me read it, and I've never seen anything else like it. So it's basically set in the year 2020, where Superman and his generation of heroes from like the JL days have been succeeded by like a new generation of heroes. And their ideals are more nihilistic, caring less about the people they're supposed to protect, and pretty much boosting their own egos. And they're even found like clashing with each other as much as they do with the villains. So basically, major disaster happens, and Superman decides to, step in and pretty much bring back and pretty much say like, hey guys, listen, like we're heroes here. We can't be doing this. So he brings in this new generation of heroes in the hopes that they reform and adopt his generation's ideals of what being a superhero is truly about. I don't know what else I could say to get you to read this book because it is fantastic. The art is amazing. Alex Ross,
he's insane. I love Alex Ross as much as like, he puts his own twist on characters. I don't remember. Do you remember the PlayStation 2 movie Spider-Man game? Couldn't touch the ground. It was all like you had to swing from building to building or swing in the air and fight people. I remember after you beat the game, you unlock like certain costumes. There's an Alex Ross Spider-Man costume.
That's cool. He goes for like realistic, like kind of like look to the costumes, like a realistic look for Superman. Like Superman's old during 2020. You could see the wrinkles like in him. You could see his hair, like his hair is gray. He's less of a cartoon and more like a man. Yeah,
exactly.
Awesome.
I love that. And the cover art. I mean, come on. Everybody like sitting there with their arms crossed, looking all like, yeah, we're the originals. Deal with it. Like that's just awesome.
What's cool about this is that DC wasn't the first to do this. Actually, Marvel had a similar series called Marvels, and it's with this kind of art. And this is what came out first before Kingdom Come. Kingdom
Come was
did
not even hear about Marvels. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I got it from the most nearest recent comic shop. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, I've got it from a comic shop, and I was really happy about it. And I was like, oh, cool! Like this is awesome, because the art was amazing, so realistic, just like the other stuff. And I haven't got a chance to read the story, but I'm sure it's great because like if it led to Kingdom Come, how can it be bad?
Exactly. So with that, next storyline is of course the Ultimate Universe of Marvel, just entirely. Go check that out. It features updated versions of all the various Marvel characters without years of continuity, and with artists and writers being given free will and free reign to just go out and change the characters in any way they wanted, or retell classic storylines in new ways. I mean, you have Peter Parker's father, Richard Parker, and Eddie Brock's father coming together. They're scientists, and they're trying to create a cure for cancer, and they make venom. And then, of course, Trask Industries takes Venom, turns it into Carnage, injects it into Peter, and after it's out and touches Cletus Cassidy, well, there's the death of Gwen Stacy for you. They made Carnage kill Gwen Stacy.
I think that's sick, though.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the clone of Gwen Stacy, which kind of comes into the Clone Saga, which brings about She-Carnage or something. It's she becomes like a Spider-Girl-esque.
Didn't even know that.
Yeah. It's cool, actually. Her hair like comes out of the Carnage suit.
Nice.
Yeah. So you have that. As time went on, the focus even eventually shifted from retreading old stories to doing things that would never even be allowed to happen in regular Marvel Universe. They wiped out most of the X-Men. They disbanded the Fantastic Four and made Reed Richards become the next Doctor Doom. And my least favorite part, they killed off Peter Parker. I mean, don't get me wrong. I got some props for Miles. He's out there doing his thing now. But Peter Parker will always be Spider-Man to me, and that's what I grew up with. I relate to him so much as a character and his whole background. And so because of that, like, it was sad to see that go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Peter Parker is a great Spider-Man. And I gotta say, like, change isn't always bad. And I know, like, you're not a fan of Miles and everything, but like just from talking to a few of my friends about this, like when I was talking about Spider-Man comics back in the day when I was really into Spider-Man, they're like, oh, it'd be cool if Spider-Man if they ever did something where he wasn't white, because they're just so used to that. And when Miles came out, my friends were like, oh, that's so cool. Like, let's read about him. And they were like really interested in it just because of the diversity. And I was like, diversity's like, it's important to have in comics. I'm not saying change every single character.
Well, yeah.
But I'm saying like changing some up or making new storylines. I think it's okay.
And you have Sam Wilson now in the comics, whose Falcon is now Captain America.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now Cap's back. There's now two Captain Americas, but he goes by Captain Steve Rogers now. So. And
they also do like gender bent stuff, like Jane Foster's Thor now, and I think that's really cool.
And pretty much this is where like the basis of all these changes now have come from the Ultimate Universe. Ultimate Universe.
Yeah, I agree. And just getting off topic of like just kind of Marvel and DC and just kind of diving into more of the indie comics. There is Invincible, and that's one of the comics talked about before. It's written by Robert Kirkman. Also, he does he does The Walking Dead. He does Outcast. Both great series. It's drawn by Cory Walker. Now it's drawn by somebody else, but that was like back when Invincible first came out. So it's about a kid named Mark Grayson. He's a teenage superhero called Invincible. He's a normal high school senior, normal part-time job. Otherwise, just like a normal life. The only thing is that his father Nolan is actually the superhero called Omni-Man, who's the most powerful superhero on the planet. So he's 17. He begins to display superpowers, and they come from his father, obviously, who's a member of the Vitrilmite race. So according to Nolan, it's like they pioneered the galaxy on a mission of benevolence and enlightenment. That's what they do. So as Invincible, Mark begins working as a superhero. His father acts as his mentor, meeting other heroes. Mark worked occasionally with a superhero team called Teen Team.
Teen Titans.
Yeah, I know.
This is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have wanted to read this for so long. I've never gotten the chance to, and it seems so interesting to me. But it just listening to this, the descriptions of it, it's literally ripping from like Superboy, Spider-Man, Teen Titans. The list goes on. Don't get me wrong. I love all this, but
yeah. So like the team consisted of Robot, Rexplode, Duplicate literally is her name. Duplicate. Adam Eve. I mean, so from their discovering that his physics teacher has been turning his students into human bombs.
Fun.
Yeah. So he stops his teacher with the help of the heroine, Adam Eve, and foils a plan to make an army of robots created by the Mauler twins. And this just goes on, and it's cool to see like these different kind of like characters being introduced and things like that, and they sound really different. And I like that it's not all about, you know, Spider-Man, Batman, everything else, but like, I don't know, stuff like this you gotta appreciate. I know one of my friends like really appreciates the Invincible series. He's a huge fan, and he's also a big Marvel fan too. But he can appreciate differences in comics, especially superheroes.
And speaking of Marvel, we're gonna go back to that a little bit. Both of our favorite graphic novels and storylines. Not your favorite movie per se. Civil War, written by Mark Miller and drawn by Steve McNiven. This is pretty much the epitome of all Marvel graphic novels. This is what put Marvel graphic novels on the map.
I mean, I don't know much about Marvel graphic novels, but I do know that this is one of the better ones that I've appreciated over time. And, you know, Civil War, man, like Mark Millar, Steve McNiven. I mean, it's so good. It's such a dark
hero against hero, soldier against the government. Like, you'd never think Cap would ever side against the government, and you'd never think Iron Man, like even just picturing how Robert Downey Jr. has even portrayed Iron Man, you'd never think any like iteration of Iron Man would ever side with the government.
That's true. And that's what made this book so like interesting. Like having Cap face off against Iron Man, heroes against heroes, like seeing death, seeing things like this dark, really dark story. And this dives into the problem that I had with the movie because, oh my gosh. I don't know if I want to get into it because it's just, I love this book so much. And me and my buddy read it when we were kids. We loved it. We couldn't get enough. The issues, the art was beautiful. The story was great. We never, like, there's a scene in there where Daredevil is getting locked up and he says something, he makes a religious reference to Iron Man and says, like, I guess that's 2 pieces for you, Judas. And
flicks a quarter at him.
And flicks a quarter at him or something like that. And I'm just, or like whatever, 33 pieces. I forget what it was. But like, it was so cool because I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Scenes like that make this book, you know?
And of course, the infamous, I'm going to go unmask myself Spider-Man scene. I went out and actually, last time we went to Comics on the Green in Scranton, I found the single issue of him unmasking himself and the aftermath of J. Jonah Jameson reacting and everything. And we're going to have to go sue Peter Parker now and everything. Like, for, you know, like breach of contract and that kind of whole thing. And it was cool to see that because not only did they have the main storyline, but they had all these subplots that you had to literally go by any comic with the little thing above the bar in like the little bar in the top of the cover that said Civil War. If you saw Civil War on there, you had to buy it all, collect them all, stack it in order. And like there was a certain order I could never really like figure out, like whether it's like main storyline and then Cap, Spider-Man, but whatever it is. Because there's actually even a storyline of Wolverine going out and doing his own thing because Cap sends him out to go find the bad guy that blew up the school. So, I mean, it is this crazy, crazy storyline that's huge. And you can only imagine how huge it is if you only read the main plot line.
Yeah, there's spin-offs of Civil War, and it's for Punisher, I think Spider-Man, like pretty much every character, just so you see the perspective of what's happening.
And it's not just a storyline like, oh, Spider-Man stopped Doc Ock. Okay, what's going to happen next month or next week or whatever when I buy the next issue? Like, no, there was aftermath with this, which unfortunately led to one more day where Spider-Man unfortunately saves MJ from, I think it was Crossbones was hired by Kingpin or something. I forget exactly who it was. I think it was Crossbones. And he saves her with his spider sense or whatever, catches her, and Crossbones accidentally hits Aunt May. So she's in a coma in the hospital, dying, and Peter makes a deal with the devil, Mephisto, to sell his marriage to Mary Jane in order to save Aunt May. And in order to do that, Mephisto also erased the idea that Peter unmasked himself. So he's now back to no one knows who he is. In fact, I don't even think some of the superheroes know who he is in the comics during that time. And before he decides to fully agree to this deal, he ends up finding this little girl that he has to follow throughout the whole storyline. And this little redheaded girl is leading him along like alleyways and stuff like that along the whole storyline. And then you find out in the end, you see him kneeling, weeping, bawling his eyes out, crying because he makes the deal and he finds out that would have been the daughter he had if he chose MJ. Like, how do you do that to a guy? Come on.
I don't know, man. Creative differences.
Yeah.
It's just comic book writers have to come up with new ideas every day in order to keep people interested, you know?
True.
I'm not saying this is the best storyline because it definitely wasn't.
A lot of backlash.
And I haven't read it, so I could barely give you an opinion on it. But take things as they are, I guess.
Grain of salt.
Also, just to go back to Civil War real quick, it was 31. He said 31 pieces of silver.
Aha,
I messed that up completely.
Okay.
It was 30 pieces of silver originally, but he said, "Guess that's 31 pieces of silver you got now, huh? Sleep well, Judas."
And tosses him the quarter.
And and that's that scene was great.
Oh my god, I love that. But yeah, so Civil War overall, must read book. Go read that.
Definitely. The next one, kick it off for Marvel. It's a one by Brian K. Vaughan, who also writes Saga, which is amazing, and it's drawn by Adrian Alfano, which I don't really know anything. I've never really seen much things drawn by him, but basically, this series featured a group of 6 kids. Their parents routinely met every year for a charity event. So one year, the kids spy on their parents, learn that they're this kind of group called the Pride. And it happens to be a criminal group of mob bosses, time travelers, dark wizards, and mad scientists, alien invaders, telepathic mutants, the whole lot of them. Basically, the kids steal weapons and resources from their parents, learn that they themselves inherited their parents' powers. So basically, Alex, one of the characters, Alex Wilder, a prodigy, leads the team, while Nico Minoru learns she's a powerful witch. And then there's Carolina Dean, who discovers she's an alien. And then you got Gertrude Yorks, who learns of her telepathic link to a dinosaur. And then you got Chase Stein, who steals his father's futuristic gloves. And then you got a young Molly Hayes, who learns she's a mutant with incredible strength. That's a pretty cool team to me.
Yeah.
I was just like...
It reminds me of Power Pack. Do you remember them, the 3 kids?
Barely. I don't think I've ever heard of Power Pack.
They did it was 3 little kids, and they did stories where they would meet up all these different superheroes. So there was an issue where they met up with Spider-Man, and it was they put them into stories you would buy a Spider-Man comic, and then the back of it would be Power Pack meets Spider-Man or whatever, and he'd fall into a vat of whatever toxic waste or whatever that Vulture was trying to create to make himself younger and have hair again. It was all comedy, and it turns out he falls into it and becomes a kid. So he becomes Spider Kid and joins the Power Pack to fight Vulture until Spider-Man falls into the ocean and realizes water makes him his right age again. And so, Adrian Toomes gets away, jumps into the water, and all of a sudden becomes old again. And on the yacht with the girls, all of a sudden the girls run away. They're like, ew, old guy. So it's funny to see stuff like that. They met Wolverine. They've done stuff with the Fantastic Four and their kids. But there was 3 kids. It was I remember the guy was Jack, and he could turn himself into a cloud, air. And there was 2 girls. I forget their names. One was a redhead and one was blonde. And one of them I think had flight or super strength or something, and the other one shot beams from their hands. So it was a pretty cool thing. They wore red, white, and yellow jumpsuits. Each one had a distinct color, so it was kind of cool to see that. But yeah, that kind of thing. It's little kids going up against these big villains.
Yeah, man. Well, as far as the runways, I gotta pretty much what's happened was these kids banded together, which they're all powers are awesome, defeated their parents, and atoned for the sins of what their parents did by fighting new threats that try to fill in the groups, the prides, their kind of absence,
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really interesting, because it's you're fighting your parents. the people that gave you the powers.
Yep.
And it's like such a cool twist. And I've always wanted to check out this title. Apparently, this it might even get a Netflix series.
Really?
Something like that. I heard something,
That's
or like a
crazy.
show is in the works. I don't know if it's a Netflix series. I might be wrong on that, but I heard there's a show in the works for the Runaways. And to be honest, Brian K. Vaughan's writing, I feel like Saga should get its own show too.
Yeah.
Just saying. Like, and even if it's an animated show, it's not like real live action, but like an animated show, I'd be okay with that. Like an adult, like kind of rated R animated show. I could see it.
Do it on Netflix.
Everything's on Netflix, but I mean also HBO and things like that. But yeah. But anyway, so to kick off from Marvel, we're gonna go to DC. Kind of take it from there. Two of the titles we talked about at the beginning of the show, The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. So The Dark Knight Returns, I believe we talked about before.
Older Batman.
Older Batman, you know, like
Older everyone.
everyone's pretty much older. Superman's with the government because like things are different now apparently, but you know, Bruce is never like
Yeah. It's like, isn't
sided
it
with
the
them.
president is like either Nixon or Reagan? I always forget.
one of the I don't remember
It's like
which
one of
one
the,
it
I think
was,
it's
but-
Nixon, and he hires like Superman to take out Batman.
Because Batman's becoming a symbol
Yeah.
of something that's not what they want, you know?
Yeah, he's going against the law.
Yeah. And he thinks he's the law, which is like a
But
reference.
he is the law. I'm the law.
And it's a really cool book because it pins Batman against Superman and one of the most iconic fights that they have ever had. And it also inspired the Batman v Superman movie. It's inspired a lot of different things in like over time, I believe, like in comic books, because it's been that iconic of a book. And
Remember me, Clark, the one man who beat you. That's my favorite line in the entire thing. Don't get me wrong, I love the whole one-armed Green Arrow where he's just like, I just want a little piece of him. Because, of course, Matt Damon. What am I saying? Matt Damon doing the like the voice of him, like just goofing around on like a set. That really triggered like we could see a hardened Green Arrow in the DCEU, and like, but that scene where he's just the one man who beat you, because he did. He beat Superman.
he beat Superman for like 5 minutes. I would say like because like Superman like kryptonite hit him, but then it eventually evaporates and Superman gets better. If it was like a rock that you stuck in Superman's chest, then that's a different story. He probably would die. But
True. I mean, let's be honest. If he had another arrow of kryptonite, shot it again, and if Batman wanted to kill, boom, gun to the head.
and that wasn't Batman's goal.
Well,
It
yeah,
was just to,
exactly. It wasn't the
It was
goal.
to get the government and Superman off his back so he could be alone and
Pretend he was dead.
yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers. But yeah, I love that though. Like he is the world's greatest detective.
He always has a contingency plan for everything, and people say, "Oh, that's a bunch of, baloney." But
Or you don't trust your own friends, the Justice League. But hey, Superman's gone evil before.
yeah.
Same with Hal Jordan, but I mean,
it happens. Like sometimes people go to the dark side. Just people are not always gonna be good.
they got cool capes. What can I say? But yeah, of course, as we said before, we also talked about Watchmen. It's the storyline of these retired superheroes. The comedian is killed. In the movie, he's played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's now Negan and also Batman's father in Batman v Superman. So amazing actor, and I think he did a great job even as the comedian. But with that, the comedian's killed, and now Night Owl, or is it?
It's Night Owl.
Yeah, Night Owl, Rorschach, the
Ozymandias.
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan, and Silk Spectre.
That's it. I couldn't remember her name. I knew it started with an S. But yeah, these people come together and they're trying to figure out who did it. And it's almost like, like that time to solve a mystery gang kind of thing, but in this very, very dark and adult setting.
Watchmen's a great book. Like I would recommend that. I think it's still in the top 100 graphic novels of all time.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely something.
And they're bringing it back. So, of course, now, when we say Watchmen, it's not just like it's a continuation, like it's a a comic series that's been going on. They did one big graphic novel, and that is it. They ended it with, however they ended it, don't want to spoil it for you guys, but they ended it and said, that's it. Now all of a sudden we see these new DC, comics coming out. DC, the New 52, they ended that, created Rebirth. So, spoiler warning in the comics, at the end of the first book of DC Rebirth, we find the comedian's pin in the Batcave. And there's supposedly the reason why comics have been so dark for DC and why everybody's been saying, I'm not really liking DC Comics anymore. They're trying to change it and say it was the Watchmen's fault. So
yeah, because Dr. Manhattan created the DC universe in a sense because he is a god.
Yeah, pretty much.
He could turn a bullet into flowers. He could turn he'll do whatever he wants. He pretty much made his own. I'm pretty sure he made his own I don't know. I can't remember what it was. It was on a planet on Mars, and he just made his own kind of
clock or whatever, that big mechanical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he just did it because he could.
Yeah, I remember in the movie. I remember he made 20 versions of him, so he can spend time with his loved one, and then also spend time with work on projects, get another thing done, eat, sleep. He did 20 different things at once because he just split himself.
Mm-hmm.
So going on with that, Chris, I don't think you want to talk about this one because you don't know it as much.
I mean, I'll still comment on it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I know you will. It's my favorite thing, Walking Dead. Robert Kirkman is the man. This is a story about a sheriff who gets shot in the chest. And his partner, Shane, takes him to the hospital. As Rick, the sheriff, says, don't tell Lori. Ends up going to the hospital because it was way too much than it actually was. Puts himself in a coma. Wakes up from the coma. Zombie apocalypse. Now they never say zombie because back when I think this started, zombie was a term you can't use or something, or somebody coined the phrase zombie. So they called them walkers, hence The Walking Dead. So now it's Rick Grimes trying to find his family while he's out in this apocalypse trying to realize what is going on. Sooner or later, he finds his family, meets a whole new group. Turns out Shane has been there for Lori when he wasn't. And it all goes to craziness after that. They're up to over 150 issues now. They're doing graphic novels where they're taking all the issues, putting them together and everything. A bunch of my friends collect them. I'm not as much into the comics. I bought some key issues here or there, but I love the show, and it's a great adaptation, whether it's exactly the same, a little bit different, whatever it is. Great stuff coming out of there.
Yeah, I gotta see. I've seen some of the Walking Dead show. I've seen the comics too. I have a few buddies that are into the comics, and they some people actually prefer the comics over the show, but then other people just love both.
Oh, of course.
Just because.
I mean, you have key characters that are in the show, like Daryl Dixon, who, Merle, I believe, is in the comics. It's his brother. I actually met the guy that played Merle, Michael Rooker. Took a picture with him at a Wizard World in New York. Great guy. He's actually really, really nice. And he not only played Merle, but he played Daryl's brother, who was a character they just created. And, this is played by a guy who was found in a pizza shop in California and played the Boondock Saints. And from there, the rest is history, became Daryl Dixon. So, you have characters that evolve, take over other characters' roles from the comics. So you're still getting pretty much an adaptation of the comics, but you're seeing all new things, some old things getting changed in a sense. But the comics are just, they're so significant, and it hits, okay, if the zombie apocalypse happened, let's say 5 years ago, and something happened today that causes the world to change or act differently, something happens in The Walking Dead to where they're kind of along those lines. So you see betrayal, you see lust, love, whatever it is. You see kids coming of age and becoming not kids anymore. They want to find someone that they can settle down with. Carl finally gets a girlfriend later on in the comics, Rick Grimes' son.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to see this stuff.
Well, you watch characters progress because Carl, I used to never like Carl, and then all of a sudden now he's like this,
He's a
badass.
Yeah, we could say that.
Yeah, I mean, so the next title we're going to get into, it's one from Vertigo Comics, who's like kind of a subsidiary of like DC. It's called V for Vendetta, which is, the movie is amazing. I heard the comics are great too. You got Alan Moore, and what more can you ask for? He's a great writer. Like, just from reading this description of the book, I want to pick it up. In a world without political freedom, personal freedom, and precious little faith in anything, comes a mysterious man in a white porcelain mask who fights political oppressors through terrorism and seemingly absurd acts. It's a gripping tale of the blurred lines between ideological good and evil. Like, stuff like, first of all, V, I thought it was great because it's also played by Hugo Weaving. For those of you who don't know who Hugo Weaving is, he is
Red Skull.
Well, yeah, he's Red Skull, and he's also in Lord of the Rings as the head elf, I think.
Very true.
And I can't remember his name for the life of me, but that the movie itself made me love this, and like, just I can only imagine what the comics did for it because it came out back in like the 80s, so like around there. So I thought that was awesome because now it's like, wow, this is like so different. It ties to like political things, political issues and stuff like that.
It's become like a symbol in like the real life, like for certain not anarchy, but like the Anonymous, like they use the V for Vendetta mask, but so like it's come into play in real life as well.
Yeah, I know, definitely. And the next thing, Nick, you can take that away because I know you want to talk about it.
So the last comic we want to talk about is a single issue. It's not a storyline. It's one story, one comic. And I picked this up a couple years back. I've been looking for this for years. And it finally took me to go to Kevin Smith's Secret Stash, Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, to find it in Red Bank. And I love this book. It's Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 2, issue number 36, also known as issue 477, the Black Issue, a.k.a. the issue about 9/11. And now this has some sentimental meaning to me because, well, my father was one of the first responders that went into 9/11. We talked about this a little bit in past shows, and quickly I'll get into it. It's, even if superheroes existed in the real world and 9/11 happened, there was no way to stop it. We weren't prepared. And that's what, like, you see Peter Parker, Spider-Man, go around New York City, around Manhattan, explaining this, like, through little thought bubbles throughout the storyline. And you see how he's, like, such in shock. And all of the characters are. You see, like, New Yorkers screaming at him, "Where were you? Where were you? Why couldn't you save us?" And we weren't prepared. And at the end, there's this big picture of firefighters, Con Ed workers, policemen, all different first responders, and the superheroes all together, standing there with an American flag. Just, we can come back from this. And that is what I loved about it. It took me years to find it. So glad I found it.
And that's going to wrap us up. Thank you all for joining us. This has been Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Once again, I'm Chris Natali.
And I'm Nick Rotundo.
So we started up a YouTube channel to post all of our old videos, plus more to come, like weekly video updates, which, we'll eventually get to in due time.
Probably next semester.
Most likely. Since we'll be posting our shows on our YouTube account, be sure to subscribe and share with all your friends and family. YouTube account has been shared on our Facebook page, so be sure to like us there at www.facebook.com/geekweek885.
Tune in next week to hear our special Christmas episode. It's going to be the last episode of the semester. Finals are coming up, so it's going to be the last week of classes as well. And that episode is going to be about the Clown Prince of Crime himself, the Joker. So we're going to leave you off with that.
That was Geek Week with Chris and Nick. Be sure to tune in next week at 6 p.m.